Well. Look, we have here, right? After a summer of violence, protests, looting, burning down property, setting police stations on fire, a lot of these people that participated in these activities kind of just got away with it, right? Their charges were dropped. City officials were saying, well, it's just too much work during a pandemic to charge all these people. We just gotta let them go, right? A lot of these people was bailed out of jail. They had bail funds, all that stuff. So everybody seems to have been forgiven for what happened during the summer of violence last year, right? Everybody seems to be getting a mulligan for that, right? They're getting a pass, right? So just to be consistent, people on both sides of the issue should probably get a pass as well. And it looks like that is happening as Missouri governor pardons the McCloskey's of all charges related to the BLM protest incident. So you guys remember, I think it's Mark and Patricia McCloskey, whom are lawyers in St. Louis. They basically got in trouble for brandishing weapons and pointing their weapons at basically a mob of protesters, right, that was headed towards the St. Louis mayor's house. Okay, now they got in trouble for this because apparently you're not supposed to point weapons at people, right? Even in self-defense, you're not supposed to do that, right? That's what they say. Which, again, in my opinion, I really don't understand how people can't understand the fact that some people may feel threatened by protesters whom we've seen, again, in previous weeks, basically burn down cities, destroy property. I don't understand how people can't rationalize the potential fear that they may have had, right? That they may think that, okay, well, I'm trying to protect my home and my property because I've seen how this story plays out. Apparently, they don't have the right to think that way according to some people. But regardless, their charges have been pardoned. Okay, so let's read a little bit more here. The governor of Missouri pardoned the McCloskeys for charges related to their brandishing of weapons against Black Lives Matter protesters in June 2020. Mark and Patricia McCloskey were included in a slate of pardons that Governor Mike Parson, a Republican, released in a statement on Tuesday. The St. Louis couple pleaded guilty in June to several charges related to an incident caught on video where they brandished their weapons against protesters to protect their lives and their properties. Critics excoriated them in the media and accused them of racism, but they claimed that they feared for their lives. Okay, so they say they fear for their lives, and obviously there's some people that are just not happy about this, right? Obviously the left-wing media is probably not happy about this, and also a certain politician that I've talked about a lot, I've probably been talking about too much on my channel lately, Cori does not agree because she was involved in this incident, and she basically has a message for Mr. and Miss McCloskey, and McCloskey is going to respond to that as well. So I'm going to play both clips here so you guys can see the responses from these two individuals. Take a look.
I do want to get your reaction to a big story coming out of St. Louis. The governor of Missouri, a Republican, has pardoned Mark and Patricia McCloskey, who were famously photographed pointing guns at protesters during June of 2020 in those demonstrations in St. Louis. You were actually among the marchers who encountered the McCloskeys that day. Mark McCloskey at the Republican convention called you the Marxist liberal activist leading the mob through our neighborhood. What is your reaction to this pardon?
It is absolutely unbelievable. There are other people that there are pardons that we have been asking for, pardons that actually should happen in Missouri, and that was not one. That was not one. They stood there, they pointed their guns, totally reckless, to a group of nonviolent protesters walking down a street that had no clue that they lived there, didn't care that they lived there, didn't know them, didn't want to know them. Mark McCloskey is an absolute liar. He has spat on my name, and because of that, His day will come. You will not be successful in all that you're trying to do when you are hurting the very people that are out trying to save lives. Nothing good comes from that. He can try it, but I will not stand by and allow him or our governor to hurt the very people that are doing the work that they should be doing. So there are other people, Governor Parson, that you should be looking at. We have an activist that's been sitting for such a long time. Sitting. Do something. Actually show up and be the governor of all the people of Missouri. Not just those that follow your type of politics that actually hurt black people, that actually hurt brown people, that actually hurt people who are unhoused, that actually hurt our LGBTQ community, that actually hurt people who are of the Muslim faith, people who are struggling in this country, and people that are burdened differently than you. Stand up and be the governor of everybody. It's ridiculous.
What's your reaction to that statement?
Well, you know, the problem with communists is they don't understand the concept of private property. When she broke through my gate and she's screaming, "You can't stop the revolution," and now she says, "Well, we were just on the street." Well, that street belonged to our private neighborhood. That's private property. That was as much private property as the inside of her car that she used to live in, okay? And yet she seems to think that she's got a right to come into our neighborhood, threaten our lives, chant violent overthrow of our government, and then get mad at me, now today threaten my life.
All right, guys, so as you can see there, Cori Bush is saying that Mark McCloskey is gonna have his day, right? And you know, listen, I just find that, again, ironic coming from somebody that's always complaining about things that are being said to her, right? Things that people say to her that she feels are threats. She's always complaining about that, but yet it seems like she just said something that could be interpreted as potentially a threat. Now, like I said, I don't condone any threats. Right? I don't condone any threats of violence, anything like that whatsoever. Okay? I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy here because that's what it sounds like. Now, the details of what actually happened during this incident are shoddy, right? Like, you know, there are conflicting accounts, okay? Some people say that the front gate, the gated community, for example, the gate was tore down. It was broken. Now, there's videos of the gate actually being broken, but there's also videos of people just opening up the gate, right, and just going in. So at some point the gate was torn down. Now, whether it was torn down initially, we don't know. Right now, some people say that there was no threats made towards Mr. McCloskey and his wife, and the McCloskeys say that there were threats made towards him. Okay, and obviously, you know, he's saying in an interview with Newsmax that it's private property. Right, this is private property. Okay, and what I've been reading, this isn't the first time that the McCloskeys have tried to enforce their private property rights. And I wouldn't be surprised if the BLM protesters, you know, did disrespect his private property rights because they don't necessarily believe in private property, which is kind of what Cori Bush has been fighting against this whole week, right? The idea of having private property, that landlords own their homes, and that you should be forced to house tenants in your home that don't want to pay rent for free, right? That's what she's been fighting for, okay? She's been fighting for that, which is essentially fighting against private property rights, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't respect that. Now, apparently that's a private street owned by a trust. It's a very wealthy neighborhood. So I'm not necessarily sure how the laws work, right, in terms of the ability to enforce, you know, that private property and how much that extends. Okay, I'm not sure about that. But what I do know is that I can understand why the McCloskeys may have felt threatened. I can understand why they may have felt threatened, right? I feel like if I was in their situation, I would have felt the same way, right? Because I previously seen what had happened leading up to that incident. So I'm not going to take that situation lightly. Now, did they potentially overreact? Maybe. Okay, maybe. But at the same time, you can also say maybe not. It just depends on what is your perception of that group. Okay? And I don't blame them for thinking the way that they thought. Again, I don't understand how racism has anything to do with this. This has nothing to do with race whatsoever. It has nothing to do with race whatsoever. Matter of fact, I think Mr. McCloskey, right after the incident, said that he supported Black Lives Matter, right? But he kind of retracted that later. And I do believe that he also said he was representing a client whom was a victim of police brutality, or he had some case dealing with police brutality, right? So I don't know. And again, it's just funny to me how in all these incidents that racism comes up when it doesn't have anything to do with race. If those people were all white and they were a mob that entered his neighborhood, he probably would react the same way, right? Probably react the same way. Again, I've read about some of the things these people have done in the name of trying to protect their property, and I kind of get it. They paid a lot of money for it, right? You gonna make sure you want to protect it. I do not blame them. Mark McCloskey pleaded guilty to one misdemeanor charge of 4th degree assault, while Patricia McCloskey pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor charge of 2nd degree harassment. They were sentenced to pay fines of $750 and $2,000 respectively. Mark McCloskey has publicly stated that if he were involved in the same situation, he would have the same exact conduct, said Joel Swartz, an attorney for the couple. He believes that the pardon vindicates that conduct. In September, law enforcement officials said they would not be pressing charges against the non-BLM protesters who were arrested for trespassing during the McCloskey incident. Parson had previously said that he was very likely to pardon the couple depending on the evidence shown in court. Quote, a mob does not have the right to charge your property. They had every right to protect themselves, Parson said during a radio interview at the time. You don't know until you hear all the facts. But right now, if this is all about going after them for doing a lawful act, then yeah, if that scenario ever happened, I don't think they're going to spend any time in jail. Mark McCloskey is running for a U.S. Senate seat. So yeah, I mean, listen, the BLM protesters got away with trespassing, and the McCloskeys didn't hurt anybody, they didn't kill anybody, they didn't shoot. Okay, apparently one of the guns, the handgun that Patricia McCloskey was holding, apparently that was non-operational, right? She couldn't actually fire it. So at this point, it's like, okay, well, everybody gets a mulligan, right? Because that's what we're doing here. Everybody's getting off, right? All these other people get off with their crimes, and they get forgiven. Why can't these people get forgiven? Nobody was harmed. No harm, no foul, right? No harm, no foul. So, like I said, whether or not you believe that it was right or wrong in terms of whether, should they have pointed the guns at these protesters? Listen, I just feel like if they would have been charged and convicted, I just feel like that would have some serious consequences for the Second Amendment. And I would have questions about, okay, well, what can you do in self-defense, right? What can you do? But regardless, like I said, hey, everybody's been getting off. Why not these people? Everybody, again, Democrats are trying to pretend like this incident never happened, right? They're trying to erase history, okay? So this is a part of that. So it is what it is at this point. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.